Welcome in to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to all things Devy and C2C. Hosted by John Arrington and Aaron Wilcox. This dynamic duo brings you actionable strategies with player-driven analysis for your Devy and C2C leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into the 2026 and 2027 classes. Welcome into the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, Dynasty Coach A, joined as always by Aaron Wilcox at Aaron Wilcox86 on Twitter. And tonight we're going to be doing something a little different. We wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit. It kind of seemed like every Devy pod was talking about the same thing, and that's probably pretty normal this time of year, but we wanted to kind of switch it up, do something a little different, then get back into the norm, if you will, on the next pod, and do a mock draft of the freshman and sophomore classes, the freshman recruits this year, and then the sophomores, the ones from last year as well. And honestly, I thought it was just going to be kind of like a filler pod, something easy, whatever. As I went through and started doing this, I realized that A, it might be kind of important to do this pod, and B, it was not nearly as simple as I thought it was going to be. It was difficult. I don't even know if I'm done ranking my players, and I spent a decent amount of time doing it, so we'll figure all that out. But first, of course, we have to check in with Aaron. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
You know, I am doing well, and I very much agree with you there. This is important to do. I mean, looking ahead at the 2026 class, 2027 class even, those things, it seems too distant to worry about right now. But if you are in dynasty leagues, and you're trying to acquire some future picks, it's good to have at least a general idea of if it's going to be a really strong class. Now, we seem to come around to the realization every year. It's like, oh, the future is super, super interesting. And then things change really fast. Guys don't fully break out. They get injured. The class becomes more shallow, more deep. This is very fluid, but at this time and this juncture, we should be looking ahead to evaluate how these future classes stack up. So it'll be fun to do the two drafts tonight, the 2026 and the 2027 eligible guys. So recruits from last year's freshman class and then this year's class.
Absolutely. Before we get into all that, just wanted to ask you, generally speaking, how are you feeling about college football right now? How are you feeling about your Devy and C2C leagues, all that kind of stuff? Obviously, we try our best to be as what's the word I'm looking for? We try to be as ready for the season as possible, but it always seems to surprise you a little bit at the very least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And no, the start of the season's been really fun, and so far so good as far as results go. I think I'm 5-1 in 3 leagues, and then the last league I'm 6-0. So it's a good start all around on the campus side, and then the NFL side, also solid so far, but it's still very early there. So yeah, and one of those or a couple of those NFL side squads are kind of rebuilders, so there's always that, I guess. But for the most part, yeah, trying to compete all around there in my leagues. And I don't know, how are things stacking up for you?
Pretty well. I will say I was not a fan of the bye weeks, the week 3 bye weeks in college football. That was kind of that one kind of got me, especially I had Ashton Genty and Trevion Henderson on a bye in the same week, and I had others as well. It was just those were the two bigger names, or biggest names. And so yeah, I was not a fan of that. Last week was rough. I did okay. I made it through, but it just was setting lineups was really? It actually worked out. If you guys remember, if the listeners remember, I made a pretty bold call about Jordan Tyson on one of our previous pods, our bold takes pod. And I actually started Jordan Tyson this past week because of all those buys and everything. and he went out and put like 22 points up for me. So I appreciate that, and I'm loving it because that bold call is not looking too spicy right now.
Yeah, that was a fun podcast for anybody who hasn't listened. And not all those things are going to come true by any means. A couple of them are already kaput, but it was a fun pod, and that's cool that he's showing back up, bouncing back from injury here. So as far as these classes go tonight, which draft would you like to do? I mean, do you want to do the freshman from last season or freshman from this season?
Oh, so you're wanting to split it up? I thought we were doing it together.
Ooh, my thought process was kind of drafting out both classes, not necessarily together, but just kind of separately.
Ooh. Okay.
It could be interesting. I mean,
I thought, yeah, honestly, I thought that's what we were doing, but that's fine. We can split it up. That would actually made it a lot easier. I wouldn't have spent as much time on my rigs if I had known that, because that was where it got difficult, was trying to figure out where do I have this guy over this guy. They're pretty damn close, but one's a freshman, one's a sophomore, yada yada yada. Yeah.
I mean, I'm prepared either way. It could get pretty interesting, like you said, combining them, but separate. I think
I kind of want to combine them. I kind of just want to do it. I mean, A, I prepared for it, but B, I think it's important because like it helps the listeners, it helps everyone kind of understand how at least we feel about these prospects and how to value them for trades, for whatever whatever it might be. So I mean, if you're okay with it, I think we should go ahead and combine the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at the end, just because I had prepared some things like specific for the classes, I can kind of list off the guys that I would have drafted like roughly in order for each of the classes.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I listed at least, let's see, like 3 rounds worth of players. I don't think we're going to go through 3 rounds worth of players. So I mean, we can if you really want to. If we go quick enough, that's not normally our forte. But if it does happen, we could probably go 3 rounds, or we could just kind of run through them, quickly thereafter, like you said.
Yeah, for sure, at least 2, and see where we end up time wise on that.
All right. So obviously, we're going to be talking about Superflex, PPR, tight end premium. I'll be completely upfront with you. I didn't even bring any tight ends. So if you want to throw a tight end or two out there, that by all means do it. I know I have a fan. I do have one player that I'm a fan of. Maybe I'll just throw him in randomly, but I didn't actually put any in my ranks when I was doing this. So we'll have to see if I get a hair up my butt during the actual draft. But I'll go ahead. I switched things up on you. So I'll go ahead and let you start off with the 101 of the 2026 and 27 mock draft. And you are on the clock, my friend.
Yeah, a couple different ways you could go with the 101. You could go certainly the quarterback route and saying, okay, it's super flex, right? Super valuable to invest in quarterbacks. Or you could go the route of saying maybe there's a different position where there's a quote unquote safe prospect, very promising guy. And I think at this point, there are those different directions. I'm a bit torn, but I'm just going to go ahead and go with the wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State. Just breaking out as a true freshman, just been very dominant thus far. He's set up in the long term. Ohio State is going to continue to feed him. Just a very clean prospect. And I think he's going to retain value really well versus going with a quarterback here. There could be some volatility. We don't necessarily know with the guys in the 26 or 27 class, how the resume is going to pan out. But I'm pretty sure we're going to see Jeremiah Smith pan out as a wide receiver prospect. So he's my 101 here.
Yeah, I like it. I think that one was pretty easy. Honestly, I'm sure that different people could go different ways here, but I think this one's pretty easy for me. I'm going to go kind of in the similar vein here, and I'm going to go with Ryan Williams, true freshman wide receiver. I was such a big fan of him as a recruit, and he's already doing it in the first couple weeks, and he's doing it with a quarterback that's not necessarily known for his passing ability, even though he does have a big arm and things like that, which kind of fits Ryan Williams' play style. And he has a 17.3 A dot, like all that kind of stuff. So like he's throwing it down the field, and that's great. But Ryan Williams doing what he's doing at 17 years old, reclassified. He's not even supposed to be out of high school yet, and yet he's doing these things at Alabama. I love every second of it. I still can't believe you guys let me get him at 111 in our supplemental draft. Like I'll never let you forget that. I will never forget it. Obviously, it's just unbelievable. I love it to death.
Yeah, I don't know what the guy at 109, 110, 108, the guy who was drafted there must have been just
No
the
idea,
worst.
but you guys
Yeah.
let me have him at 111, and I am so very happy about it. Who do you have at 103?
I have Arch Manning. I think at this point, we started to see those flashes, and whether it's a matter of him getting the starting job this season, next season, I don't think it matters. He's just set up so well for success there at Texas. We've seen some of the flashes, even that super long scramble. Like that was a fun run. I did not expect to see that out of Arch. So more mobility than potentially expected. His weapons there are going to be great. He has the talent. He has some of the development as a passer, at least in those small samples that we've seen, that you would expect out of a Manning. So that is very impressive. He's a high-end recruit. He's just got a lot of things going his way, checks a ton of boxes. And yeah, I'm excited for what the future may hold for him being a 2026 eligible quarterback. So Arch Manning is at 103 for me.
All right, we're going a lot quicker than we normally do, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw us a little tangent here. Can we talk about how Arch Manning was better than Quinn Ewers in this very game? In this one game where they played the same exact defense and everything, like I don't think anything drastically changed once Arch Manning came into the game. I don't think all of a sudden UTSA was like, all right, throw the backups in. Like they were still playing their players. Arch Manning was just substantially better than Quinn Ewers. I mean, and Ewers before, like right before, and this is not a Quinn Ewers got hurt, so he's bad take. This is Quinn Ewers was not playing amazingly before he got hurt, and he threw a nasty pick like right before he got hurt, and then obviously he got off the field. But Arch comes in, a true freshman, or I'm sorry, a sophomore here, just looking like the guy that had been there for 3-4 years, and just put up better numbers. So I don't think that's getting talked about enough. It's like, oh, people are concerned about, is it going to go back to Quinn? Is it, this and that? And I never want a player to lose their job because of injury. So like, it's not even me saying like Arch should be the guy from here on out because Quinn got hurt. But I do want people to consider the fact that Arch actually looked better in this game against the same exact team, same exact defense, same everything. And that's before we even get into the rushing, like you were saying, that one running play. Then you want to start talking about like fantasy football and all that kind of stuff. It's like, holy crap, Arch is the truth.
Yeah, I mean, whether Arch takes over now or later, that rushing upside, not that we should not expect that frequently, but yeah, we should not expect that frequently. That is for sure. But one carry for 7 yards, one carry for -6 yards, 4 carries for 0 yards. That's what Quinn Ewers has done. So we know that his rushing upside is definitely not as high as Arch's. But I mean, I'll say this just to defend Ewers a little bit. I mean, he was 14 for 16 in the game against UTSA, and he played, a good chunk of time there. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, like you said. So it's not like, 87.5 completion percentage, 11.6 yards per attempt. I mean, that's all very solid. I don't think that we can have any negative takeaways from that. He's been solid on the season, 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Now it'll be interesting, like, I mean, how do they handle this situation going forwards? That's for sure. But I don't think that Quinn has played himself out of the job. It's just, again, the health thing. So that is probably the biggest consideration there. Do they think that a banged up Quinn Ewers is better than a healthy Arch? And I would think no. But yeah, we'll see if Ewers can bounce back. But who do you have at 104 here?
Well, real quick, he had a 6.0 intended air yards in that game, and then Arch came in and had like at least double that. I'd have to actually look it up for the numbers. And so yes, he was not Ewers is not playing bad. He's not playing terribly. He's not losing games or anything like that, but Arch just looked better. But that's the last I'll talk about that. We're doing a mock draft. So, tangent done. I will get back to my picks here. I was honestly giving myself time because I didn't know if I wanted to go which route here. I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with your plan here, and I'm going to go with Nico Iamaleava. And I think that he's probably the closest player to Arch right now, even though I definitely have Arch at 1 as far as the QBs on this list. So I think Nico's kind of done everything that we would like to see. The only thing that I think I can say that I would like to see from Nico is just bump up that intended air yards a little bit. It's fine with, being a sophomore. That's pretty normal. We would hope to see another step once he becomes a junior and so on and so forth. So it's not the end of the world. He's hitting the big time throw rate thresholds. He's hitting a lot of the thresholds I like to see. Interceptions are reasonable. Completion rates reasonable. Adjusted yards per attempt. Like, everything's just reasonable and good. I'd like to see the intended air yards up a little bit, especially considering the team he's on and the players that they have. Like, there's no reason why he shouldn't be pushing the ball down the field. And so I would like to see those numbers get up, but if that's my only nitpick from a quarterback, especially like a quarterback in his second year after a couple of games, like, that's not too bad. So I'll take Nico I here.
Yeah, don't mind that pick. I think we can get nitpicky, since you kind of threw that out there, as far as, like, you can certainly kind of zoom in and say, well, I mean, so far they've played Chattanooga and Kent State. They beat Kent State 71-0, and he only had 1 passing touchdown. So it's like, oh, okay, why is he not dominating more in the passing game? You'd think an advanced passer would do so, but again, don't want to look too much into it. But you can nitpick if you choose to. And he threw 2 picks and 2 passing touchdowns against NC State. That was a little bit concerning, but at the same time, I mean, he's been good on the season, and they have a good enough team where I think that can help kind of mask some of the deficiencies and help him, just get more comfortable slinging the ball all over the field, because that's what Tennessee wants to do. So I like that pick. I am going to go with a different quarterback here, actually. I'm going to go with Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma quarterback. I think, honestly, that was one of my bold predictions, is that he is the 101 in the 2026 class. And that is something where, now that Arch has really caught fire and whatnot, I mean, I think that he would now be the odds-on favorite. But again, that's why it was a bold take or a hot take. So I think that Jackson Arnold still has a shot for that. Nothing that he's done this season makes me panic. I do think that there's a little bit of hesitancy for me to endorse him as much as I was coming into the season. I don't think that he's necessarily shown that he's like a clear stud, but I think Jackson Arnold's been pretty solid thus far. I'm excited for what's ahead for him.
I'm actually a little surprised by this one, and I get you're definitely more prone or apt to forgive, younger players especially, and that's probably something that I need to work on. But his interception rate is just bad. I mean, it's just Will Levis bad at this point, and
but it's better than Nico's, right? Nico had 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, right?
I don't think so.
But I mean, I agree that if you go back to last season, so you're combining everything, right? You're saying as a true freshman, he threw 3 picks. That's not great for Jackson Arnold. But at the same time, it's a freshman season, so I am more likely to forgive that and kind of separate it out, right? I think that he should be, better as this season goes on from a ratio standpoint. That's for sure. That should be expected and needed out of a Jackson Arnold for sure.
I want to make sure that I'm not talking out of my ass here, because I have. Oh yeah, no, okay. So yeah, they have the same amount of interceptions this year, and then Arnold has 3 interceptions from last year as well. Obviously, he had more playing time, but he had that, and it's just it's still a smaller sample. It's something he can easily fix. It just doesn't seem like he's necessarily done it so far, because he obviously has another 2 this year. Um, I just I would like to see that fixed. Once that gets fixed, then it can easily become not an issue. But um, I Arnold was my QB1 as far as the recruits. So like, this is not me necessarily hating on Arnold, saying like, oh, I've always thought he's terrible or anything like that. Like, that is definitely not the case. I kind of want him to be good, especially for some of the players that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Like, I want him to be good, but I just don't know if I truly believe it right now. That being said, like, I just don't. He's kind of like in the middle for me right now. So I was just surprised that it was the next quarterback that you went with. But I also know that there's a lot of quarterbacks that we could probably sit here and nitpick and do all that too, and we'll have to do that. In fact, I think I'm going to. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes the third, Dylan Raiola. The dude wants to be Patrick Mahomes so bad. But I'm going to go with him here. I don't even necessarily love everything that Dylan Raiola is doing, but I understand that just a college true freshman going out and looking okay is good enough. And I'm okay with that. He's obviously on the field. He's learning. He's getting better every week, that kind of thing. Yes, I would like to see him push the ball down the field more. I would like to see more big time throws. Like, there's a lot of question marks here, but going through all these players, like, I'm looking at the running backs, I'm looking at the wide receivers. I don't know that there's not a question mark with any of those players or every single one of those players. So at least in a super flex draft, I'd probably rather just go with the question mark at the quarterback position, and it's a true freshman, so we can hope that, hey, he can get better with time and age and all that kind of stuff, and maybe even transfer out of Nebraska and get to a real team.
Yeah, no, that's fair for sure. And yeah, I mean, he's another guy where you can easily nitpick him, but it's a freshman. I mean, he's doing these things. He has the size, he has the arm talent, opportunity. He's got the job locked down there, and he's looked good. I mean, he's been efficient. Again, these are bad defenses that he's playing against. They're just plain bad. And I guess got to factor that in a little bit, but still, I mean, he's doing everything that we would ask of a guy and more for how early he is in his career, and a great recruit. He was my QB1 coming out in the class. I really liked Raiola. He has the tools. He has the Mahomes personality, not personality, but the style and all that, which is kind of a little bit strange, especially considering he acknowledged, or he didn't even acknowledge that he was trying to do anything similar to Mahomes. He's like, oh, what? I've never heard that. We were similar. Like, he played
I
it
didn't
down,
know that. Can I take away my pick? I did not know that
Yeah,
he
it
was
kinda
trying to play it
cringy.
off. Like,
Yeah,
that's
he was
so
like,
that's so cringe.
that's what I heard, at least. I guess I didn't watch like the video, but he was very much like, oh, what? No, I'm not trying to, replicate anything. Well, I'm trying to do my own thing. I'm like, well, buddy, everything that you're doing is basically looking like what Patrick Mahomes does. And if you're gonna model your game after somebody, I mean, I love that he's doing that, but
Sure.
you gotta own it a little bit.
I really hope it was sarcasm, because if he was really trying to play that off, man, that's really bad.
Yeah. No qualms with that pick. But that leaves me in a really tough spot here. Like, I think it actually drops off. So I like that you were able to get him. He was going to be my next guy. And now I'm struggling. I'm not going to lie there.
Which is not a good look for the 2026 and 2007 classes. Although I think we can both agree that there's plenty of talent here. It's just there's no guaranteed anything kind of beyond this point. Not to say that even all of those players are guaranteed, but I guess we feel a little better about them. And then now it starts getting into a lot more question marks, a lot more issues, or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, definitely. I will say that when I broke this down, just in preparation, I broke it down separately between 2026 and 2027 classes. I got a lot more excited actually for the 2027 class. So that's kind of surprising, and maybe surprising to some at least. I just found myself super excited by all the true freshmen that are starting to break out. These guys getting opportunities, looking good right away. That is just awesome to see versus the 2026 guys. I mean, some of them have started off well, but there's just still a good amount of uncertainty there. So, yeah, I mean, 2027 guys are flashing, but not all of them are going to make it or going to continue on with that success. But yeah, so quite a few guys that I'm considering here at this spot. A lot of the 2027 guys are pretty unproven to this point. Just not a whole lot of volume to go off of. So I do lean going towards maybe a guy who has more experience in the 2026 class. There are multiple guys that I could choose from here. I'm going to roll with Justice Haynes. I know that might sound a little bit surprising if you just go off of his production this year, but the guy was great talent coming out. He has size to be a 3-down back. He has the receiving abilities coming out of high school, and he's just been very efficient whenever he's got the ball thus far in college. He just hasn't had a large workload yet this season, but again, they've been kind of winning in dominant fashion, or at least pretty dominant fashion for the most part. So, 63-0 against Western Kentucky, first game of the season. He looked awesome, but he only had 4 carries for 100 some yards and a touchdown. So it's like they didn't need to force him the ball a bunch. I think that I don't know what's going on this last week against Wisconsin. I'm not going to look into it too much. The guy is just a very talented back. I think ultimately, whether he's sharing work with Jam Miller, that shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody. Like we were talking about Jam Miller here, or at least I was, kind of advocating for him as potential 1A, or at least a nice shared production in this backfield. Well, it looks like Jam is that 1A. That's okay. But Alabama backs don't always produce year 1 or year 2. I'm not worried about Haynes. He is my pick here at the 107.
I don't mind it. I had him right there at the top, and my question was just when are we going to transition to the running back? So I guess you made that decision for us, but I just didn't know exactly when it was going to happen because unfortunately there's just a lot of question marks about all these players, and Justice Haynes has looked extremely good when he's touched the ball. He hasn't touched the ball that much. I think he has maybe 21 attempts this year or something like that. It's somewhere in the 20s, which is essentially what he did last year. So that part's not great. The part I do like is he has 1.4 PPR points per touch. That's great. That's what you love to see. Albeit in a small sample, but you do love to see that, and almost a 14% big time run rate. So like those are things that you love to see out of Justice Haynes. He's definitely in the mix there for me at that pick. I think there's no clarity for me at this pick. So that's the tough part. I think I did not realize this was the way this was going to happen. But this is why we go in blind. Like we don't talk about this beforehand. We don't like pre-draft or anything. I love the fact that I'm sitting here going, you know what? At the 108, I get my baby DJ Lagway. Even though he's not going to be my baby next year because he's probably not going to be on the Gators anymore, I think I'm going to go ahead and make my bold call for DJ Lagway. I am taking at 108. I'm taking the 2025 Alabama QB1 DJ Lagway.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was where you're going with that. Nice. I would have taken DJ Lagway there, especially if I knew he was going to Bama next year. Let's go.
Well, I'm just thinking about it. I was listening to the C2C boys earlier talking about it. I think it was Felix and Matt Bruning on Campus Canton Live, I believe is the name of the pod now. They've changed it like 85 times, so forgive me if I don't remember exactly what it's called, but I want to say they were talking about how like it's almost a guarantee that Lagway is going to transfer out. Obviously we're not expecting the coach to be there anymore, and at that point, why would he stay? Like Florida's just really bad, unfortunately, and I'm sure they have decent recruits and stuff like that are coming in, but it's probably not enough to keep him around. I think Kalen DeBoer is doing a pretty good job with Jalen Milroe already. He's kind of showing off his ability to run, but then also showing off the big play ability and things like that. So what would be a great way to go ahead and repeat that act? bring in DJ Lagway that can kind of do similar things, and is probably a better passer of the ball even. And then maybe you really have that like championship contender that that you've always wanted and that you want to have. And you obviously have multiple years with them, things like that. So obviously can't guarantee it. This is not me reporting anything. I have heard zero news. I'm not that guy, but it just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I am fine with that. No qualms. Like I said, I was interested in him around this range as well. Obviously, did not fall to me, so I don't mind that whatsoever. And so, I think that we're going to come back to wow. There are a lot of guys here that we would consider, a lot of guys who are worthy of being taken at this slot. One guy that I think just offers so much upside ultimately that I really hate to leave him on the board here and not take him, though maybe it's a reach at this point because of injury. But CJ Baxter, a Texas running back, it might be a little bit surprising for folks, but let me tell you just a little bit of the rationale. So they'll be scared off by the injury, but it's LCL PCL confirmed. That is everything that I've seen online about the injury. That is less concerning long term than meniscus, ACL, those types of injuries and issues, or like a torn patellar tendon, torn quad tendon. Those things. I don't want to see those. I think that LCL, PCL, he could be worse, or it could be worse for him. So he'll be back for spring, I would anticipate, or at least for sure by summer and fall ball next year. That's what I would anticipate. And I think that CJ Baxter, he's going to step into a backfield relatively still unproven. I mean, Jaden Blue, I'm assuming he's going to move on after the season. If he knows what's good for him, he probably will move on, because I think CJ Baxter is going to come into a large role next season. I am not totally sold on Jaden Gibson. Like, you'd say whatever you want about, well, Gibson's getting involved as a true freshman. They literally don't have anybody. They have converted wide receivers and just like six string type of talents at the running back position at Texas right now. When Blue is banged up, and Baxter is just going to step in, and I think he's going to resume the role as kind of like a 1A type of guy. And Texas likes to have a workhorse type of guy. We've seen what Texas has done year after year with success with that offense and the running game. CJ Baxter, great recruit coming out. It's too bad he got injured, but I do think he'll be able to bounce back here. And I think this speaks a little bit to maybe the status of the remaining players in the 26 and 27 classes, that I went with an injured running back, right? But I mean, he's got the workhorse size, 220 pounds. I think he has the 3-down abilities that you want to be a difference making back here. So that's why I went with CJ Baxter.
I don't mind it. You said Jaden Gibson. It's Jarrett Gibson, which obviously you were combining the two, but it was Jarrett Gibson. And I'm with you. Like, Gibson was a pretty well-known recruit, highly regarded recruit. He has not done anything that's made me think that he's going to be the guy next year. And so I'm with you with that. Jaden Blue getting hurt and not being able to be the workhorse this year was probably the worst thing that could possibly happen to him. At this point, he's kind of seeming like one of those guys it's not going to happen for, unfortunately. Or if it does, it'll probably happen somewhere else. It's probably not going to happen at Texas at the very least. And, yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of concern about, like, Baxter didn't necessarily look 100% or look amazing or anything when he touched the ball last year. But unfortunately, he was kind of hurt last year as well. So I hope it's not like an injury-prone kind of thing, but who knows? We'll just have to see. But I think he was a highly regarded recruit. He was Fresh Beth's running back 1 in the class. So, I mean, there's no reason to think that he just isn't talented or anything like that. And I think it's smart to take him here and just assume, hey, he's going to be the lead guy. And we want the lead guy in an Arch Manning-led offense, like that kind of thing. So I do not hate the pick by any means. I do, however, hate making this pick because, like, it is starting to get tough. Like, so where do we go here? Do I stick with a running back? Do I go with a wide receiver? I think I'm going to go with the most proven of the unproven players here. And so for me, I have been the biggest Eric Singleton Jr. fan. I'm going to continue being the biggest Eric Singleton Jr. fan. he kind of had a slow start to the year. It was a little rough. They've played 4 games, compared to most teams have only played 3. So it's a little different when you look at their stats and all that kind of stuff. But Haynes King and the offense has not really been firing on all cylinders. Like, everything has not been as spectacular as I would have liked it to have been. But it seems like they're kind of like they're turning it around. They're fixing it in the past couple weeks, and all of a sudden Singleton's the number one guy. He's having big plays, scoring long tutties, like all that kind of stuff that we saw last year as a true freshman. He's starting to do that again. He's technically not leading the team in receiving, but I think he's only like 18 yards behind. Was it Malik Rutherford? I think it is. And Rutherford just has this like really like dink and dunk kind of like short passes that he's getting, and he's running with it. He's very athletic, so like nothing against him. But Singleton's actually looking like the legit wide receiver, running routes, doing like what a wide receiver does. I'm pretty happy to take him here at 110. I still am a very big fan of Singleton Jr., and if anyone's fallen off or fallen out of love with him, I would gladly trade for him.
Yeah, no, I mean, that I like Singleton Jr. A good amount for sure, and yeah, I'm on board with the pick. Maybe not the one that you would expect always at this point. I mean, just based on maybe where he's going ADP wise in the industry, but obviously you're drafting with me, so you know that there's a chance that I'd target him here, and just the fact that he deserves more hype, he deserves more praise. What Singleton Jr. Has done thus far in his first year plus a couple of games has been pretty nice. So, and he's a very athletic guy, so I think he's going to rise up during the draft process as well. Just knowing that he's going to test well, he has that coveted NFL speed. I think in a lot of ways he's like Xavier Worthy. I'm not saying he's going to break records with the track speed or anything like that. Like Worthy surprisingly tested that well. Like, I don't think anybody really expected that with his 40-yard dash. Like, they knew he was fast, but that fast. I think similar to that, Eric Singleton is going to test pretty well though. So yeah, I like it. For my next pick here, could have went a couple of different ways here, and maybe I'm getting caught up a little bit in recency bias with this next pick.
Oh
And
no, don't do it.
what have
Don't
you
do
done
it.
for me lately?
Uh-oh.
But I'm going to go with Caden Durham, LSU
No.
running back.
That's
Yes,
I was
yes.
between Singleton and Durham, and I was like, I don't think he's gonna take Durham yet. Blah blah blah. He's a
Oh,
freshman.
yeah.
I was
I,
wrong.
and I've loved Durham for a while, and it's just great to be able to see him actually get some early playing time and look just really well with it. And you'd think, oh, it was maybe like a screen pass they took for 80 yards and a touchdown. No, it was consistent running between the tackles. He was cutting outside and breaking it outside too, but he looked good against an SEC defense, South Carolina. And now, I mean, we see that there's a little bit of an opening there. I mean, none of the guys necessarily look that good for LSU besides Durham. Durham as a true freshman coming in with just superstar track speed. And I get he's not the biggest guy out there. He's like 5'9", 205, but that's big enough. I don't think he's ever going to be a big bulky guy because of just the way his frame is and his height, and that's just fine. I would rather have him remain around 200 to 208 in that range, something like that, and remain explosive and elusive and all those things. So I think he is potentially the future of that LSU backfield, whether he's a feature back or not. I hope he's not necessarily. They're not going to run him into the ground, but he's just an exciting playmaker. So Caden Durham, I'm excited to see what's ahead, and he's going to be the 111 here.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were taking him soon. I thought that I could get away with an extra pick, and I was wrong. But I also know that you like Singleton. I don't know. It's tough. Like this whole thing, I have a feeling I'm going to get sniped a handful of times because it's really difficult. I can play the game of, it seems like some of the Devy analysts right now, it's just like, oh, I'll just lean the freshman because at least he's unproven. We can say, this or that or whatever, and I can play that game, but that's not the game I want to play. I want to play the best player game. And so that's what I'm trying to do here, but it's difficult, I will say. That being said, I am going to go with a true freshman here. and is a player that I've been hyping for probably the entire offseason. Ever since I created Freshbeth, I became a huge fan of Cam Coleman, and a lot of people did not seem to be big fans of Cam Coleman. They didn't think he was athletic enough, whatever. He doesn't play the right style of football anymore. Well, he got on the field early and often, and it seems like he's kind of taking care of that. Now, I will admit that he already got hurt. I think he's supposed to be back this week, and so I think it'll be okay. But just what he's already done as a true freshman, albeit in a small sample and everything, he is looking pretty good for the player that I was thinking was going to be. People were saying he maybe wasn't athletic enough. Well, obviously in an extremely small sample, he's only run 44 routes so far. He has a 23.1 ADOT. Like, that's generally not what you see out of a player that's not athletic, like that they can't get down the field and do big things. On top of that, he has 28.8 yards per reception. So he's actually getting yards after the catch, even beyond that ADOT. So that's showing even more athleticism. He's not just catching it and falling down, a la like a Mike Evans or somebody like that, even though obviously we would love for him to become a Mike Evans. But he's not even doing that necessarily. So I haven't seen anything out of Cam Coleman that's changed my mind about him since I fell in love with him as a recruit. I don't want to bury the lead, so what we can talk about, I'm a fan of the new QB that has come in and taken over for throwing the ball to Cam Coleman, Hank Brown to the moon. But I just, I'm a big fan. I'm taking Cam Coleman here at 112.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely small sample size, so I don't want to look too into it against that competition as well. But he has like 4 receptions on the season, right? So I mean, that big playability. I'm like, well, let's see how that kind of evens out. But he is the type of guy where he's always going to have a pretty high yards per reception. He's always going to have a higher ADOT because it's not like a dump off like little screen player. He's definitely a win down the field type of guy, win with speed, win with ball skills, and hopefully he can build that nuance to his game. So I don't mind it at all. I am, somewhat high on Cam Coleman as well, but he was not where I was expecting you were going to go with that pick. But I mean, there's multiple viable players here. So should we recap off the first round here?
Absolutely. We have Jeremiah Smith starting us off at 101, Ryan Williams at 102, 103's Arch Manning, Nico Iamaleava at 4, Jackson Arnold at 5, Dylan Raiola at 6, Justice Haynes at 7, DJ Lagway at 8, CJ Baxter at 9, Eric Singleton Jr. at 10, Caden Durham at 11, and 112 wrapping up the first round, Cam Coleman out of Auburn. And I'll say this is a nice mix. We have some sophomores, we have some freshmen. I wonder if that's going to continue or if we're going to start seeing a sway in one direction or the other in this second round.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting here, but I would imagine that there's still going to be a little bit of a mix back and forth. And since I went first in the first round, do you want to snake around here and also go first in the second round with back-to-backs, or you want to keep it the same? Any preference?
Yeah, let's snake it. I'll do it. Okay. I'm going to take... Oh, and my daughter just turned off all the lights in the house. I'm going to take... She does that when she goes to bed. She, even though we've had voice activated lights for the longest time, she still turns off every light in the house. Sorry, instead of just... Oh, no, it was my wife. Never mind. It was not my daughter. I tried to blame the 9-year-old, but it was not the 9-year-old. So I am going to go here. Sorry, I lost my track here. I'm going to go with a player that was not overly hyped for the longest time, but it just seems like everyone's completely fallen in love with him more recently. He's doing, fairly big things. He's leading the team as far as I know, at Texas. And Ryan Wingo, a true freshman. I'm going to go ahead and take him here. I know you came around. You were not a fan in the beginning, but you came around to Wingo like later on in the process, and you probably saw something, and then you guess what? You were right. Like Texas was right to have him, and I guess the services were right. Credit to the services, because a lot of people were arguing like there's no reason for him to be a 5-star recruit, this and that, or a high 4, whatever he was. There's no reason for any of that. Well, here we go. Ryan Wingo's looking like a stud. Going back to Arch Manning, I guess like there's not much I can say that can discredit Ryan Wingo at this point.
Yeah, no, I like the pick. I mean, it's one of those guys where it's like, do you have to take him here? No, but there's just not a clear tier or drop off necessarily. So definitely one of those guys where I came around to him. That's for sure. He was not the most clean prospect. Definitely deployed in kind of a strange way in high school, but Texas is really unlocking all the ability that he has. So that's very exciting for Ryan Wingo. At 202, I'm going to go with the guy that you and I both are in agreement with the ranks, and that is, the RB1 in this freshman class, at least, coming into the season, the Taylor Tatum pick here for Oklahoma. So he's running back, I think he was the highest or the consensus RB1 in the class amongst the recruiting services, and between you and I. So Tatum, he has not seen a lot of the field yet, but when he has, as a true freshman, he's already put up a little bit of production. He's looked good. So I anticipate, the competition that he's dealing with there at Oklahoma is pretty questionable. I could see him getting more and more run as the season goes on. So Tatum is the pick here at 202.
Yeah, I love it. I didn't know when I needed to take him. I've been hesitant to start with the running backs that I want to draft, but I probably need to at some point if I want to actually get them, because you keep snatching all of them here. I love Tatum. I love him. I loved him as a recruit. I love everything that I've seen when he's touched the ball. Unfortunately, he's not touching it nearly enough yet, and so like that's the only real concern. I can't hate on the pick by any means, because like I said, I love the player. I think he's going to end up being the lead back. I think the real question is just, when do they finally go, hey, we should make this guy the lead back, because it technically hasn't happened yet. I guess it's a good sign that he's already he's already ahead of Gavin Sawchuk. He's kind of like left him for dead. So that's a great sign. I kind of thought after he looked amazing in, was it week 1 or I think maybe it was week 2. He looked amazing. And then I kind of thought he was going to continue on, and it just, I don't know, it didn't seem to really happen. So I am.
Yeah. Oh, just to add one thing
Oh,
too.
go ahead.
He actually had a solid enough game this last week. He wasn't as efficient, but against Tulane, he had 2 touchdowns. So, Taylor Tatum, he's starting to show why, he was this anticipated recruit and big time get for Oklahoma. So,
Yeah, and I think one of them was a receiving touchdown, right? So,
right.
showing the receiving prowess as well, which is obviously something that we need to see if we're going to be drafting a player and asking for big things out of them. So,
Yeah.
I like the pick. I am going to try to officially snipe you here. You got me a couple times here. You definitely got me with Caden Durham. I was not happy about that one. I would have liked to have gotten Tatum for sure. I'm going to try and get you here. I'm going to take your boy. I've done a complete 180 on this player, and I feel like I should probably even apologize to Jeremiah Love, because I did not give him any credit, and yet, I mean, he has looked amazing this year. Absolutely amazing. And so I don't know what changed. I really don't know what changed. Usually it's the other way around. It's, you get the smaller sample size and you get the truly uber efficient player in year 1, and then all of a sudden they start getting the rock more often and they lose efficiency. It was the complete opposite with Love, where he wasn't efficient at all. He wasn't breaking up big plays. He wasn't doing anything, and he looked worse than the starter, even in a small sample. And then he gets it. Now, I mean, he still only has 40 touches altogether, so it's not like he has some like huge workload through 3 games. but I mean, just looks like a different player. I don't know if he lost weight, if he focused on athleticism. I have no idea, but something changed this offseason, and Jeremiah Love looks like a different player, and he looks like a player that's going to be important to have when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. And last season, I don't think he looked bad. I mean, it was just definitely he wasn't breaking off necessarily as many big plays, and he just wasn't getting that many touches per game. Like his average touch count was like between like four, maybe five carries per game last season, and I think he ended up the regular season stats for him, it was like 6.2 yards per carry. So it's, no slouch for sure last year, but definitely, like you said, he has stepped up a little further. And it's been a guy who I liked coming out. Like, my confidence in him breaking out this season was wavering. It's not like I didn't have a little bit of hesitation coming into this season, but I've always liked the talent. Ultimately, you should when do you see a guy coming out and you're like, well, he's a really great athletic, versatile back, don't necessarily give up just after a freshman season, especially when opportunity is available there. So he actually gained weight. So it's not like he slimmed down to get more explosive. Like he's gained about 10 pounds and then he's become more explosive even. So it shows you the type of athlete he is. He has a breakaway speed. He has really, really good receiving abilities. We haven't really even seen him unleashed. And I don't think we're going to see him unleashed in this offense. Because, I mean, look at the quarterback play there. I mean, Riley Leonard, how many rushing touchdowns did he have last week? And how many rushes did he have? And that's with a torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. And he's just rushing it every down. Like, I mean, where's Jeremiah Love going to get these touches from? They're still finding a way to get him, of course, the carries and some touches in the receiving game, but he's not going to be a true receiving weapon this season under that quarterback play, at least. So just keep that into consideration, of course, when we're looking at his production. But I can't actually believe that you took him here. So that was a snipe.
That was the goal. I mean, honestly, it was the next player on my list, at least for the running back. So it wasn't like I went off my list to snipe you or anything. But I it's just the most surprising thing. Like of all the things that we've talked about this offseason, I felt like I had a pretty good. I had Jeremiah Love pegged. Like I knew who he was and what he was going to be, and I was just wrong. Like, he's just proved me wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes these guys, they just need a year or two. But as far as this next pick goes, this is one where I'm playing the system a little bit. And, I'm not always a big play the system type of guy, but there are some exceptions. And so I actually took Justin Haynes pretty early, Alabama back, right? Very trusted system. We're going to go to a different position here. We're going to go to Ohio State wide receiver. We're going to go to Carnell Tate. And the thing with Carnell Tate is that he's not going to put up eye-popping numbers this season unless Emeka Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith get injured, which, I mean, I guess could always happen. We've seen Emeka Egbuka get banged up before. At the end of the day, I don't even need monster numbers to feel good about Tate here in the second. I just think that at the end of the day, he's going to be drafted likely, probably like a day 2 type of guy coming out of Ohio State. He offers a lot of the things that you want to see out of a safe wide receiver prospect. Does he have the most upside in the world? Probably not, but I mean, he's going to play in a style similar to maybe a Michael Pittman, maybe more prime like Michael Thomas. And again, I'm not saying that he's as talented as that by any means, but just not somebody who's going to break the game of fantasy football most likely, but we'll be getting a pretty solid player when it's all said and done, I would think, with Carnell Tate. So he's going to be able to technically advance his game and develop there at Ohio State. And, he's going to show up in those clutch situations and in the red zone. So I like a lot of aspects to his profile. The production there is just kind of like, maybe even Chris Olave or some other guys who've come out of there recently. Sometimes the production isn't quite as elite as you'd see out of other systems where they hog the whole offense to themselves. That's just something you got to know with Ohio State. That's for sure.
Yeah, I like the pick. I probably have about 4 or 5 wide receivers here in the tier, and he was one of them. So I don't know that I necessarily would have taken him next, but I can't question it by any means. It's just, and like I said, they're all in a tier. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Obviously, it's very hard to go wrong with the Ohio State wide receiver, especially one that's actually producing, even though, albeit in a small fashion, when you're getting overshadowed by Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, like all that kind of stuff. It's very difficult to stand out and be that guy. That doesn't mean that he can't be the guy, the number 2 next year, when Emeka Egbuka goes away and things like that. So I like the pick. I think he's right there. I was a little higher on Tate, and it's not even his fault. Like I said, I was a little higher on Tate going into the offseason, and then once Jeremiah Smith hit, it was just like, man, it's hard to be too high on Tate. I'm already high on Egbuka. Now I'm high on Smith. It's really tough. So I've lowered him a little bit, or I guess I should say Debbie Beth's lowered him a little bit, but I still like the pick, especially in the second round. I like it there. I have a similar player, actually, same draft class, possibly even like same recruit pedigree and everything, and has probably done about the same in college football. And Jonte Cook, I'm going to go ahead and take him here, and I think it's just another player. He's going to be, if he doesn't necessarily put it all together this year, I think by next year he can be a stud wide receiver with Arch Manning and go ahead and just look amazing then. But we're already seeing a connection. Every time Arch has come into the game this season, Jonte Cook has touched the ball. And so we're already seeing that connection. And if Arch keeps throwing the ball, Jonte's going to keep touching the ball, and it seems like that's the way that it's working out. Arch is like, look, I don't care. I'm not throwing it to these washed up players, these other ones, like not Ryan Wingo, whoever. I'm not throwing it to them. I'm throwing it to Jonte, and he's going to score me 2 touchdowns once I enter the game. Well, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take Jonte there. He was a high-end prospect. Some people had him as their wide receiver 1 in the classes at one point. Every time he's been on the field, I've seen good things. He just unfortunately hasn't been on the field nearly as much as I would have liked him to have been. And so this is where it starts getting really difficult, because you're trying to say, like, well, I like this player, but he hasn't been on the field then. But then this player's done a little bit more, but I don't like him as much, and so on and so forth. So this part of the draft's getting a little more difficult.
Yeah, this is probably one of the first picks where I'm like, well, he wasn't actually in consideration for me here. I do feel like it's potentially a bit of a reach or just projection, you could say. But like you said, I mean, he has looked good with Arch. Maybe that means something to the coaching staff, and they say that we got to get him more and more touches this season. I like his talent. I liked him coming out, absolutely. So just one of those guys where, he's not really a top 2 offensive weapon for them right now in that receiving game, but it doesn't mean that he won't break out next season. A lot of the guys in this range, we just haven't really seen it yet. So he falls into that bucket. Very talented guy in a good situation for future years for sure. So, you know, definitely on my list of guys, just was not necessarily next up in the queue. So yeah, I respect that pick. Now, there's a couple different ways I could go with this pick here. That's for sure. You go with the guy who's proven, or go with the guy who's a little bit more unproven and just high upside. And I'm going to go with the more unproven and high upside option. Nate Frazier, just a big time running back. Well, I should say he showed up big time. He had to be relied upon to start the season with Trevor Etienne being suspended, and he looked really good. And he has sustained some sort of a minor injury, like an ankle sprain or something along those lines. So that's why we haven't seen even more of Nate Frazier lately. So it's not like he's just gone to being an obscure back. But when a true freshman is stepping up and looking really explosive and functional for Georgia, I definitely have to pay attention. And he's one of those guys where he has enough size to handle work between the tackles, but he has enough speed and athleticism and the receiving ability, even going back to high school, to make him a weapon in all phases of the game. Now, I don't expect a ton of like CFF production. If this was a, Devy versus CFF specific, situation, I would say definitely more valuable in Devy compared to the, weekly starting that you'd like in a campus to Canton league. But Nate Frazier, Georgia back, is the pick at 206 for me.
I like it. I have him right here in this mix. I have him not that far behind Tatum. As far as what he's done so far. So he's hitting a lot of the thresholds that I look for. 1.0 PPR points per touch. 10% big time run rate. It's a very small sample. He only has 22 attempts, but he was a highly regarded recruit. Things have kind of worked out for him to be on the field, even though we never thought he was going to touch the field in year one. And yet here we go, like 85 injuries later, and Nate Frazier's touching the ball. So that's already kind of a good sign for him. I think at this point, as much as it pains me to say it, I think that Branson Robinson, we can just consider, is not long for the football world. And unfortunately, and like him, I guess I lost you for a second. Sorry about that. All right. Well, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but
Yeah, I can hear you again. Sorry.
okay, there we go. Okay, so I don't know what you heard or didn't hear, but basically, I just think that he's done well enough, and the fact that he's already seeing the field is good enough for me, and so I will. I'm happy with the pick here at what was it 206. I will go ahead and take my guy. I guess I'm gonna go with the less proven player here as well, and I'm going to take Quentin Martin, who was our running back 2 in the class going into the season. Nothing has changed. Like he either hasn't touched the field or has barely touched the field if he has. So like not much has changed. It's just a good situation, a good running back going into a good running back situation where we can just assume that everything is going to be fine eventually, but we have no proof of that whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, we still don't have any proof, but everything report wise coming out of the spring and summer, like, oh yeah, this guy's, playing really well. He's going to be the next guy up. It's just that there's 2 capable guys ahead of him. So yeah, we shouldn't be expecting a lot of production to this point. Easy to maybe start sliding some guys ahead of him, but just don't forget about him. Don't completely bury Quentin Martin. He is a stud. Well, a potential stud. There are some concerns about, like, is he going to like bulk up to the frame that we need? Is he going to be too like kind of tall and lanky? But Penn State finds a way to transform these guys. If there's a weight room that's going to do it, I have a lot of faith that Penn State can do that. Yeah,
and
so
he's already athletic, so like that part's not
yeah.
a problem.
Yeah, right. And even if he wasn't uber athletic, I mean, he's a solid athlete right now, and they can not only transform the body but the athleticism. I mean, they've proven that Saquon Barkley coming into college was like a 4.65 guy, and he was just insanely athletic by the time he got through that strength and conditioning program at Penn State. Like, people don't talk about that often enough, like how much faster he got when he came to college. And so I think that we could be seeing something like that for Quentin Martin, just bulking up and also keeping that speed or gaining it even. So, yep, good pick there. Next up, I mean, there's a couple of different options here, that's for sure. One of the guys who I have a little bit of concern with, but I do think he's a viable weapon still at this point. Is this offense really going to maximize his talents to the best of his abilities? I don't know. Or they're just going to spread the ball around. We'll see. But Zachariah Branch, he has fallen quite a ways here. The former 5-star wide receiver who is at USC. So we usually like Lincoln Riley offenses. This season's going to be very interesting. It's not maybe the best quarterback option, but he's looked fine thus far, and they've just spread the ball out a little bit too much for one guy to really stick out thus far. I think Zachariah Branch is a pretty explosive weapon that we want to pay attention to, but we need to have him develop and get even more involved in that offense. It's a little bit concerning thus far that he hasn't commanded a little bit higher target share. And ultimately, that was the big concern that you and I had discussed in the past. I wrote him up. I believe I wrote him up for the Devy guide, or at least for one of my articles. And some of those things were the concerns. Like, everybody was very excited about him as a top 5 guy. I think to get him this late in the second, maybe because he's sliding so much, maybe it's reaching and it's going to end up not looking so good in the future. But I'm willing to take this slide and say, hey, let's not forget about this very explosive, talented kid.
Yeah, I've obviously expressed my concerns about Branch. He was on my list. He was not the next player on my list, but I've also been one of the biggest Branch haters, if you will. So that's not a huge shock. I will say, I will give you credit, like, with the athleticism that he has, all it takes is just for it to click. And then next thing you know, he's a stud. And so taking him in the middle to end of the second is really not the end of the world. I'm I'm just to the point where I'm kind of out on Branch. Like, I really feel like he's a Kadarius Toney or somebody to that effect, at this point, and I just don't really want anything to do with them. That doesn't mean that he can't get better or click at some point, but I'm kind of out at this point. If I was going to take an uber athletic player, I would take the player I'm going to take now, and that's London Humphreys. I think that he is a much more proven player, albeit also a raw player, but a much more proven player. Also at one of the best programs in the nation, albeit not one of the best receiver programs. But he already flashed in week 1, which was great. I would have loved for him to continue that into week 2 and beyond. That has not happened so far. So we'll have to see exactly when he gets on the field, how he does and all that. But just that week 1 with the 2 huge plays just showed everything that I needed to see. It didn't change coming from Vanderbilt over to Georgia. He's still that huge play waiting to happen. He's kind of what people want Zachariah Branch to be, but he's doing it, and he's actually producing when he's on the field, and he's not just getting these little screen routes and stuff like that. He's going down the field and producing that way. I've been one of the highest people. I've taken Humphreys way too early in drafts, and I'll continue doing it here just to keep on brand.
Yeah, and I did take him in a league this offseason. So I do hope that you're right. But you know what else hasn't changed is that he's the third fiddle in the offense, and that's not a great thing. Again, that's not the best landing spot as far as developing wide receiver talent, but it's not the worst either. I mean, at the end of the day, Georgia is a place where you kind of have to wait your turn. The quarterback play this year you would think would be really really great. Beck just needs some time to heat up. I don't know what's going on there. It's small sample size, right? So we'll see how London Humphreys grows into this role in the offense. And he's one of those guys where the athletic talent is there. Are the technical components? Is he's going to be somebody who can earn the trust of that coaching staff? That's kind of the question there. So at this point, more uncertainty. We know that Zachariah Branch has a starting role. London Humphrey is not so sure on that. And I think from a speed standpoint, probably very similar guys. Like, I know London Humphreys has that really, really big yards per reception type of deal. So statistically, you'd think that he's way faster. But again, some of it's how Branch is being utilized. And it is very frustrating to watch these Lincoln Riley offenses sometimes with how they use these guys like Mario Williams? And there's just sometimes these small slot guys that are just misutilized with Lincoln Riley. So that is concerning for sure. But nope, that's an upside pick right there with London Humphreys. And at 110, I'm kind of torn for floor or upside here. I'm just going to go with a pick here, a guy that I have been hyping up and loving. And I think that we're starting to see that there is a lot of upside there right away. And that's Bryant Wesco. Clemson wide receiver. Seems like a little bit of a reach if you're going off of preseason rankings. But I mean, I was always high on him as far as recruits go, as far as the wide receivers in this class. And he showed out. I mean, showed out in the spring. He showed out thus far in the season, out producing TJ Moore, looking, a little bit more of the big play threat between the two. And that was a big reason why Bryant Wesco did fall in the recruit services and rankings and just a lot of people's personal rankings, was because, okay, well, TJ Moore is going to go there. Wesco can't possibly also be good. I don't think that's the case. And we're seeing some positive flashes for Bryant Wesco. If we're taking some other guys in this draft, so far who haven't really done much from a production standpoint. Wesco hasn't done much either, but he's looked really, really great in limited touches as a true freshman. So definitely an exciting kid there for Clemson.
I like it. He was my next wide receiver, so I'm right there with you. I was not the biggest fan. I'm still not the biggest fan of a Clemson wide receiver, but he's doing it regardless of how we feel about the quarterback or the system or anything like that. So only 18 routes. Can't get too excited, but I love the ADOT. I love everything that he's done so far, and he's producing as a true freshman. So I like the pick there. Like I said, he was my next guy. Okay, this is where it's getting tough. I feel like, I don't know if you feel the same way. I feel like we're at a tear drop here. We're a tear break here. I don't have too many players that I'm feeling 100% about or feeling great about. I'm gonna take a player. Oh man, I'm going to take a wide receiver here. It's another upside play. I don't love what he's done so far. I think it's been a lot of, lower ADOT plays and stuff like that. But I've seen the athleticism. The quarterback play has not been there. I'm hoping for better days for Eugene Wilson here. I know that he got uber hyped during the offseason like he was going to be a stud. I did not like that. And I still don't necessarily love drafting him, but I understand and I do see the athleticism. I see like some of the excitement with Eugene Wilson or Trey Wilson, whatever you want to call him, out of Florida. I do worry that DJ Lagway is going away and who's going to be the quarterback there and things like that. Is he going to transfer as well? I mean, he probably will or maybe will. I hope that he can be utilized better in a different system, regardless if it's the same team, different system, or different team, different system. I'm just hoping for the best there, and I'm willing to take him at 211.
Yeah, man, I respect that. Absolutely. I mean, Eugene Wilson, he's a fun playmaking guy. And if you want maybe a even cheaper look at like a Zachariah Branch type of guy, Eugene Wilson is the discount version. In some cases, maybe they're more similar in value now that Branch has been somewhat disappointing. But yeah, Eugene, I mean, he's a little bit banged up right now. I don't think he's going to play this weekend. I don't think that we should zoom in too much and say, well, let's make a big adjustment to our ranks based on one game. Like we know that the quarterback play there is not the best. It's not driving the ball down the field quite yet. I mean, maybe Lagway can, if he gets more playing time this season, if he continues to play, I should say, maybe he can unlock what Eugene Wilson is capable of. But yeah, I don't mind the pick here. Like you said, maybe there is some drop off with the player pool here. I thought you were going to go with a different, maybe lower ADA, lower yards per reception type of guy who has experience here. And I'm also tempted with that player. You might know who I'm referencing. Right?
Yeah, I know you're talking about now, but he's on the list.
Yeah. Exactly. But I'm actually going to go with TJ Moore. I know I just drafted a Clemson wide receiver, and it might seem counterintuitive, but we're not drafting him to the same team, not handcuffing wide receivers here. We're not playing that type of game with this draft. We're just trying to take best player available. And I do think that TJ Moore is still a very good player. It's not actually that long ago where we saw Clemson as wide receiver U in at least one of the best colleges to draft wide receivers from. The coaching staff, has changed a little bit, but Dabo's still there. Not saying that Dabo's like some sort of great coach, but at this point, we know that, some of these wide receivers, especially when they get talented ones there, they're able to feed them. And Cade Klubnik, that's the big question mark, but we might not have that much longer to deal with Cade Klubnik. Like he might be gone after this season. And ultimately, he's been in this offense long enough where, I mean, he's not going to completely tank it. He's not going to elevate it, but at the end of the day, these guys are going to get involved. TJ Moore, Brant Wesco playing early on. It's very promising to see that. And I expect to see more and more as they kind of force their way onto the field. And TJ Moore just plays that big boundary wide receiver position that these other guys Tyler Brown and Antonio Williams. They don't really play that. So he provides something that's kind of unique. I am kind of curious to see how much Wesco cuts into his playing time. They are going to cannibalize, but long term, we want to bank on these talented guys. And TJ Moore has a ton of talent, was a great recruit, got a lot going for him still.
Yeah, I mean it's a complete projection at this point, which is fine. You know, he's young enough to where that's not the end of the world. We liked him as a recruit. I have no qualms here at the end of the second. Do you want to recap the second for us, and then if you have it, I can do it if you don't. And then do we want to run through a third round like really quickly?
Yeah, we could certainly do a speed round for the third round. And yeah, to recap, Ryan Wingo, John took him at 201 here. That's Texas wide receiver, Ryan Wingo. 202, Taylor Tatum, Oklahoma running back, freshman. 203, Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame back, second-year player. 204, Carnell Tate, wide receiver at Ohio State, second-year player. 205, Jonte Cook, wide receiver at Texas, who's also a second-year player. True freshman Nate Frazier is at the 206 here. Georgia running back. And another freshman at 207, running back Quinton Martin at Penn State. At 208, Zachariah Branch, wide receiver at USC, who's a second-year player. At 209, London Humphreys, the second-year wide receiver at Georgia. 210, Bryant Wesco, true freshman, wide receiver at Clemson. 211, Eugene Wilson, second-year wide receiver at Florida. And then to wrap up the second round, 212, TJ Moore, Clemson wide receiver, freshman player for them. Let's see. Do you want me to lead off, or do you...
We'll do a speed round. Yeah, you can lead off. We'll continue the snake here, but real quick before we do it, were there any like substantial surprises? I know obviously you had said, like you weren't ready for who was it that you said? There was one that you were kind of shocked by or whatever.
Maybe London Humphreys. I mean, I was a little bit thinking that Jonte Cook was a reach, but at the same time, I like that pick. Enough where I think that London Humphreys was probably the one. If I had to pick one where I was like, okay, yeah, I could see that being a little bit of a reach.
I'm perfectly fine being the London Humphreys guy. I don't mind it at all. I mean, like just the fact that he even got on the field in week 1 just shows me everything I need to know. Like, yeah, it might be a longer timeline than I was hoping for him to be a true stud, but like we've already seen it, and so I truly believe in the player. I'm fine being the London Humphreys guy. I agree. It's early. Like there's some of these players you just don't. There's some of these players that the Devy community just doesn't respect, and so you don't have to take them early. And London Humphreys is absolutely one of those players.
Yeah. Any other reaches or really great values or anything that you saw there?
Not really. I mean, I'm proud of you for taking Arch Manning as the first quarterback overall. I don't think that there was any like crazy reaches or anything like that I can think of. I'm in my brain, I'm just completely out on Zachariah Branch, so it feels like a reach, but it's not. Like it's not actually a reach. To me, it feels like a reach. But if you drafted this with 100 different Devy analysts, he would probably be drafted at least in the second round 99 out of 100 times, and then you'd have me and I'd be like, nope, not doing it. So I think I'm the odd man out there, not everyone else, but no, I don't think it's bad. But why don't we run through real quick? Just, we don't have to go too crazy talking it through or anything like that, but why don't you start us off at pick 25 here, 301.
Okay, I'm going to select running back here, Darius Taylor, homer pick, I suppose. Minnesota back. Just a guy who can handle a nice workload, who has enough burst. He's not maybe your typical Minnesota guy who's a little bit slower, more of a plotter. Darius Taylor has enough to his game where I think there's a chance for NFL upside there. At this point in the third, I'll take that at 301.
All right, I was actually mad at myself because I had made a point before we actually did this pod that I wanted to draft Eli Holstein out of Pitt as like my last pick in the second round, just to make a point of like, this guy is doing something special. at Pitt, and just looks like a legit quarterback. It through 3 weeks, he's actually played some decent competition, and yet he's putting up like over 300 yards a game. He already has 9 touchdowns, just only 2 interceptions. I guess everything could completely fall out or fall off, at some point, but it has definitely not happened yet. And I wanted to get my Eli Holstein love out there for the listeners.
Yeah, yeah, no, I respect it. It's one of those ones where it seems like a reach, but the more and more that we think about it and we see what he's done thus far after being a pretty good recruit, right? Alabama wanted him, so that's pretty telling. And I think that him going to Pitt, I mean, that was an intriguing landing spot. I know you like the other guy there, but I mean, Holstein, he's been able to take the job and excel. So it's
I can't be mad.
um,
He looks great. I'd be mad if he looked terrible. I'd be like, what the hell's going on? But he looks great. I can't be mad about it.
Yep, yep. So, okay. At 203 here, I'm going to go with another guy. We talked about Eugene Wilson. We talked about Zachariah Branch as far as low ADOT guys who are not necessarily doing a lot of things down the field, not as explosive as we'd like to see in some ways, or at least how they're being deployed. And I think that the perfect short to intermediate type of wide receiver is Kevin Concepcion for NC State. I think here his fall has gone far enough. I will take him here. I do think a lot of it is how he's being deployed. That offense has not looked great. And I know they put a true freshman in there and everybody's excited, but that true freshman is going to dump off underneath to the safe option that KC Concepcion is. So we're not going to necessarily see him work down the field. I'm hoping that eventually by year 3 we see more of it, but again, that's maybe more wishful thinking. I still think the talent's there. You watch him play and he can make guys miss. He's a good underneath and intermediate route runner. We just need to see more down the field. So hopefully that quarterback situation does improve. I think it will as the season goes on. They're going to figure something out at NC State. There's enough weapons there where I could see them turning it around somewhat. So that's my pick here in the third.
Yeah, I like it. I've seen a little bit of the big playability that he has. Unfortunately, just kind of has that crappy scheme or whatever going for him, and it's just not really working out. I don't mind the pick though. I'm going to go with another player, completely unproven, but showing out as a true freshman. I kind of expressed some love for him earlier in the offseason, but not necessarily as much as my Cam Coleman love. But Perry Thompson on the same team, they actually have extremely similar stats through a handful of games, or not even a handful, a couple of games here. And so, I think I am happy with a lot of the things that are going on at Auburn right now, and I'm happy to have these like really high end wide receivers, and take Perry Thompson here in the third.
Yeah, fair selection for sure. Definitely on the list. And he's getting some love, just listen to, was it Back to Devy or one of the podcasts from campus2canton.com. They were talking about him as like a top 5 type of guy in the class, maybe higher. So definitely exciting to see what he's done thus far, but it's not a big sample size like him, Cam Coleman. You can be excited about Simmons even. There's multiple guys at Auburn right now, though, from that young receiving core that we should be excited about. So it's a good price to pay if you're going to draft Perry Thompson, if he can fall that far past like a Cam Coleman, for example. So I do not mind that at all. Now I'm stuck in a spot here, which I actually don't love. I'm going to go with the guy, Micah Hudson, wide receiver, Texas Tech. I think just going off of the talent coming out into college, I still think that he's very much a talented guy. We've talked about the concerns with him plenty in the past, but again, here in the mid third, it seems like it's time for a guy who's just that talented coming out of high school.
Yeah, I've never been the biggest Micah Hudson fan, but he was a 5-star high-end recruit. I never understood why he went to Texas Tech. I just doesn't make any sense, but that was kind of my whole thing is I don't believe in the quarterback. I don't believe in the system. I don't believe in hardly anything. Then he had the knee surgery, and I was just kind of out. And so there's if you had said this a month or two ago and you had said, "Oh, Micah Hudson in the middle of the third," people would have been like, "Oh, you're insane." But here we are in the middle of the third, and that's where he's being drafted. So I'm I cannot argue with you about that one. But I will say I think there's a player that I'm struggling with because I kind of fell in love with them from his true freshman season, and then he hasn't done nearly as much in year two, and it's but I think it has more to do with the QB play than anything. I was looking it up just to make sure that I'm not crazy. It's Jace Brown out of Kansas State. I think that I loved everything that he did as a true freshman. I think had almost 500 receiving yards, everything. Now in year two, he's still leading the team. He has almost double the receiving yards of anyone else. It's just we only have through 3 games 490 passing yards out of Avery Johnson. Has not been the passing display that we were kind of hoping to see out of that Kansas State offense. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to look past everything. If you're looking for true production, you're not going to fall in love with Jace Brown. But when you start looking at market share, yards per reception, like things like that actually matter for these players, showing their ability to run routes, showing their ability to earn targets, like things like that, that's where you fall in love with Jace Brown. So I'm taking him.
Okay, yeah, I was curious if he was going to get drafted. We've talked about him. Both been very high on him. I have way too much exposure to Jace Brown. If you're listening to this pod right now, shoot me a trade offer. I might move a share. So maybe we can work out something, John, or maybe a different listener is into that. But no, I don't mind it at all. I still think he's a good player, but a little bit concerning there with the quarterback play. As far as running backs go, there's a couple different routes. I mean, there's actually quite a few freshmen that I'm considering here. There is a tight end. I don't know if we're going to actually get a tight end in this draft, to be honest, but I'm going to go with there's 2 different guys here. I'm going to go with Jarrett Gibson, the running back at Texas. Okay. I think that there's a chance that I know I drafted CJ Baxter pretty highly in this draft. I still think that he is the favorite to win the job, but dark horse to be a running back of the future at Texas and getting a lot of run this year. Maybe they have a 1-2 punch next year with CJ Baxter and Gibson. I think that Gibson was kind of a slept on guy in this class, certainly mentioned on this podcast, but not necessarily touted as a top end guy. And I think the biggest issue with him is he was not very efficient in high school. He was not very explosive. So that top end speed is kind of limited, but there are other traits that are important. That's for sure. As a running back position, do you need to be able to, get up to top speed really fast? Yeah, absolutely. You need to be agile. You need to be powerful. You need to have good vision, all those things. And Jarrett Gibson does a lot of those things well. So I'm taking him here. Texas, true freshman who's going to get some playing time this season.
Yeah, I don't mind it. He was a high-end recruit. He's definitely not shown the athleticism, which scares me, but I'm also trying to grow. And if Jeremiah Love can do it, Jarrett Gibson can do it, so I'm going to give him a second chance, and so I'm willing to forgive these year one players. I don't know. I don't know that I've seen a turnaround like Jeremiah Love, so like I don't know that I actually believe it's going to happen before, but I mean, just the fact that it has happened at least shows us that it can and all that kind of stuff. So I think just the fact that he's even on the field right now, I know they've obviously had a ridiculous amount of injuries, but just the fact that he's on the field just kind of lends itself to he'll probably be on the field at some point next year and all that. Speaking of on the field,
double-digit carries, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, double-digit carries every game thus far for Jarrett Gibson. Kind of blowouts, in those games. So maybe that's why, and the lack of other running back options, to be honest. But yeah, I will say though, I was much more confident that, Jeremiah Love was a good explosive athlete at least versus Jarrett Gibson. I don't really think he's that good of an athlete. But what I will say is that we've talked about how these athletic programs can transform these guys, can really allow these guys to train and become more efficient as athletes. Well, we can see that at Texas. I mean, Texas has been putting out athletic backs and very productive backs. So again, a little bit of faith in that system to kind of develop and let him become more efficient potentially as an athlete and a runner.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so it's finally time. I've said the words Hank Brown to the moon way too many times this offseason to not take Hank Brown here in the third round here. It finally happened. I have been saying it. I thought Hank Brown was going to start the season. He did not. These coaches can be a little stubborn for some reason. Peyton Thorne started the season with a 5-4 touchdown to interception ratio, and then they finally decided, hey, it's time. It's the Hank Brown show. In 2 games, he has completed 66.7% of his pass attempts, 6 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, 15.03 adjusted yards per attempt. I don't understand why they ever trotted out Peyton Thorne. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's a reason why I'm excited about Cam Coleman. There's a reason why I'm excited about Perry Thompson. It's Hank Brown, baby. And so we're drafting him here. He does not get any love whatsoever. I have a feeling by the time the season's over, if we were to redo this, and we probably will at some point, but if we were to redo this, Hank Brown's going a hell of a lot earlier than the late third round.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see how it pans out ultimately. He has some fun young weapons to target there. I don't have a strong opinion on Hank Brown. Excuse me. Wow. Okay. That's that's a fun pick though. Ultimately, that sneeze really took me out there, huh?
Yeah, it did. That was a good one too. All right, you got one for us, or did that knock you out?
Yeah, knock me out. You pick. No, I'm just kidding. Jordan Lyle, Miami running back, guy that I've been high on. I cannot believe that I have 0 shares of him after, saying his praises this offseason, saying, I like this guy. Well, doesn't show up in my rostership numbers, but Jordan Lyle's getting a lot of touches. In fact, I believe he has 20 some, like 24, 25 carries or something like that on the season. And he's looked pretty good with them. In fact, I mean, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but it's in the realm of possibilities that he supplants a Damian Martinez even, which is insane. Why would they do that at Miami? Damian Martinez is a good back, but they're just, I don't know if it was a little bit of injury last game or what, but they're like, no, Jordan Lyle, we kind of like what you're doing as a fresh, explosive back. He's a guy who, again, we've debated this before, like how big is he? Like that matters for sure for that running back position, but he's got time to bulk up. He's at least at 190. That's the official weight now that's out there for him. So I think he can get bigger. He probably is already bigger, but he's my pick here. Jordan Lyle, exciting true freshman at Miami.
Okay, this is funny because you have Jordan Lyle as your pick. I have Mark Fletcher as my pick, and I mean, you want to talk about. And this is coming from the guy that loves Damian Martinez more than anyone. I made the bold claim that Damian Martinez would be a top 5 running back before the end of the season. That is not looking like one of my better ones. I've had some good ones. That was maybe not one of the best, but like you said, I don't think it's necessarily a talent thing with Martinez. Like I think we both believe in the talent. I don't know what's going on there. They all kind of look good, but they're all getting touches. But guess who looks the best? Mark Fletcher. At least statistically, guess who looks the best this year? It's Mark Fletcher. He scored the most touchdowns. He has the most receiving yards. He has the third most rushing yards, but he also has the third most. He has the third most rushing yards, but he has the third most attempts out of those 3 players. So but he also has he's been more efficient with those touches and everything. So it's kind of crazy, but I think he got kind of forgotten because of the injury and everything that happened to him. People are like, oh, he's just never going to be a thing. I think Mark Fletcher might be a thing. And so, people kind of express concerns like he's too big. He's never going to be athletic enough. Well, he's putting up the same efficiency, if not better, than these other 2 backs that we love. So where's this lack of efficiency? Where's this lack of athleticism? I don't know. I'm not even hating on the Jordan Lyle pick, but I wasn't even prepared for that. But literally my next player was Mark Fletcher. So it's just kind of hilarious because we're sitting there going, somebody's going to stand out here eventually. But Fletcher has kind of the whole shebang. I mean, he has size. He's showing us athleticism, at least, when he's touching the ball. And then, now he's in this like three-headed monster, but I think people kind of thought that he was just going to kind of be gone, and he's definitely not gone.
Yeah, right. He's bounced back better from injury than I anticipated, and then better than pretty much everybody anticipated. So, yeah, Fletcher, knowing that this is a little bit of a committee backfield, that does make me a little bit hesitant, of course, to go there. With a guy like Jordan Lyle, but Jordan Lyle as a true freshman is out touching Mark Fletcher. So that shows you like who the coaching staff probably likes more, who is going to break more big plays. I would imagine Jordan Lyle in the long term would do so, but thus far that hasn't been the case. Though he's got more touches, Mark Fletcher has been more the big play guy. So thus far he's been running over these teams. But again, this is him. He didn't really have a great game against Florida, to be honest, but he scored 2 touchdowns. So they gave him the goal line work. But then, he's running over dudes. He was looking explosive, but that was against Florida, A&M, and Ball State. Those are not SEC or high-end ACC defenses, anything like that. So I am curious to see how this transforms as they get into a little bit more formidable. The schedule here, ultimately, let's not bury Damian Martinez. He's not dead, but yeah, don't mind either of these picks here. There's actually some talent now in that Miami backfield, which is kind of exciting to see. Just as a team in general, awesome to see, because that passing game is also kind of exciting this season too. So I like it. Now,
the hilarious part is, at least in this last game, is that we talked about Damian Martinez, we talked about Mark Fletcher, we talked about Jordan Lyle. None of those players actually led the team in rushing, at least against Ball State. It was actually AJ Allen, or Jay Allen, however you pronounce it. And so he's actually the most efficient running back on the team so far this season, but he also has the fourth most touches. So I'm not saying that but it's just kind of crazy. Like they're really splitting the carries here, and I don't necessarily know why, besides the fact that, like, hey, we have some solid guys, like, let's keep them all healthy, all that kind of stuff. But for Devy purposes, for C2C purposes especially, is not the most ideal thing that we could be talking about.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. I guess a good thing to consider that they're just splitting it up so much right now. Hard to have a lot of takeaways, but again, these are blowout games too. So now my next pick, I went back and forth amongst a couple of different players here. I'm going to go with kind of a fun one. Peyton Lewis, Tennessee running back. 6'1", 210 pounds, very bursty guy. So far in the season, he has 17 carries, 118 yards for 6.9 yards per carry. I think he's just going to get more and more involved. He's bouncing back off of an injury. Okay, so he missed a lot of the late summer into the fall, and so he's starting at already a disadvantage, but he's showing up. This last game, he earned 10 carries for basically 100 yards against Kent State. And I get that was a big blowout game, but it makes me feel a little bit better that he's getting involved now. And I think that his size with that explosion, that explosive rush ability is just very tantalizing. So him and Sampson could make a very nice 1-2 punch as the season goes on, as they're going to need some guys with size out there as Tennessee clashes with some SEC defenses. So give me Peyton Lewis. There's a couple different guys I was considering here, but that's who I ended up settling on.
I only have eyes for Dylan Sampson, so I have not seen any other player do anything on that team. But I don't hate the pick. He was he's probably going to be involved at some point if he hasn't already, and eventually, once Sampson moves on, I think Sampson's going to get drafted pretty highly going into next year, and then it could be the Peyton Lewis show. At that point, I think we can all kind of agree it's not going to be the Cam Selton show, or at least it doesn't seem like it's going to be the Cam Selton show. So it definitely could be the Lewis show. I'm not going to lie, I have 5 players that I could choose from here, and I really don't know who to choose. So I have I guess I could just mention all of them, but I wanted to go with Abu Sama, but I think he's been hurt. He, regardless of being hurt or healthy or whatever, he has not produced like we would have expected him to produce this season, and so I don't love it. David Eziamume was not the greatest recruit as far as composite score and all that kind of stuff, but it was just a player that we are excited about. I could have gone with him. Caleb Jackson was a huge player that I was a huge fan of. Has gained weight, has not looked like the same player this season. That one scares the crap out of me. Although I loved him last year, albeit in a small sample. And then Roderick Robinson, we talked about earlier. I really was a huge fan of him as well, but he's hurt. Has he been Wally pipped? Like I really don't know. So that was another. So the player that I'm actually going to go with to finish this off here is a running back out of USC, Quentin Joyner. I'm going to go ahead and take him here. He hasn't been like the most exciting player, but he's looked, pretty efficient and not necessarily like the greatest offense or anything like that out there. And he was a highly regarded recruit and everything. A little bit of receiving game, a little bit of everything. Nothing exciting. That's why I'm taking him here at 312 and not at 212 or 112 or anything like that. I don't know how. I don't even know if we've ever actually really touched on or talked about Quentin Joyner before, but that's who I'm taking here at 312.
Nice. And hopefully we have. I wrote him up for the Devy guide this year. One of the guys that I kind of liked as a sleeper. Now, I didn't like the fact that he wasn't getting more hype there as far as like having a prominent role early in the season, but he's forced his way onto the field there. We know how we like these USC backs when one actually emerges that has, 3-down potential, all of that. So, yeah, I really do like the pick and the player with Quentin Joyner. So you do want to recap briefly our speed round, which I mean was fair. I wouldn't say it was our fastest, but definitely not our slowest. That's for sure.
It was a speed round for us. For normal pods, they would have been done about 30 minutes ago. But hey, we give you guys your bang for your buck here. But 301 Darius Taylor, 302 Eli Holstein, don't forget the name. 303 Kevin Concepcion, Casey Concepcion, whatever you want to call him. 304 Perry Thompson, 305 Micah Hudson at 6, Jace Brown, Jarrett Gibson at 7, Hank Brown at 8, don't forget the name, Jordan Lyle at 9, Mark Fletcher at 10, Peyton Lewis at 11, and Quentin Joyner from USC at 312 to wrap up our third round. That was fun. And like I said, I didn't know exactly what to expect when I first started creating my ranks and all that kind of stuff. And then the more I did it, I was like, man, this does actually seem kind of important because there's a lot of ambiguity and just up in the airness in Devy right now, especially. And at some point, we have to start making up our minds about these players, whether we're trying to trade for them, trade them away, do whatever. Yeah, at some point, you got to actually start making up your mind. And there is a lot up in the air, unfortunately. I feel pretty confident with that first round of players that we put up. Like those players are going to be solid players when it's all said and done. I don't know that I can say too much more about the rest. Like, I love some of those players. I love their upside and all that kind of stuff. I definitely do not feel like I can guarantee anything.
No, not a lot of guarantees from the groupings of players that we drafted from tonight. But at the end of the day, a lot of guys with upside, they definitely caught our eye for one reason or another. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent out of this incoming freshman class. So I like the things that we're seeing initially. A lot of guys are getting early opportunity, which is huge, very important for their development and their future values. So we could see a lot of these guys really spike up in values. Maybe we'll have to put out a poll of our drafts on Twitter, see what the people think, who won each round. But yeah, no, this was a lot of fun as an exercise and hopefully a fruitful deal for everybody listening too.
I think so. And that's not to say that there's not important players from the next upcoming draft class, which we will obviously get into more on the next podcast. I really want, especially with having some like pretty major teams having buys in week 3, I really wanted to get that third or possibly even fourth game before we truly started like giving our expertise on on some of these players, because sometimes, especially in the beginning of the season, you're playing these FCS teams and so on and so forth. It's really difficult to get any kind of actual idea of what's happening to those players. And so, getting that third or possibly even fourth game, for some of us, even the fifth game, is just so huge. And then you can actually start making decisions on like, okay, I'm completely out on this player, or I'm 100% in. Give me all of blah blah blah.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And we do have to sneak in our other pod topic, the annual risers and fallers, doing that draft too. So that'll be fun.
Absolutely. That'll be the plan for the next pod, talking about the risers and fallers. And that's what I'm saying. We wanted to have as much information as we possibly could before we did it, and we just felt like we didn't quite have enough, although we're getting there. So I like the way everything's working out. We appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you have learned along with us and enjoy this podcast. But we are sitting at the hour 45 mark, so we should probably go ahead and get out of here. Aaron, do you have any words of wisdom for us before we do that?
No, no, I do not have words of wisdom. However, I will say that looking at the season thus far, I mean, this is a fun group of true freshmen again. So I just want to reiterate that point, and that makes it so much more fun for us in these coming years, knowing that there's a fresh crop of guys coming up that have a bunch of talent and upside. So really want everybody to get excited for that. I mean, of course, temper your expectations. Not everybody's going to hit, right? Just because they've flashed does not mean that they're going to consistently earn targets or carries, but a good start.
All right. If you didn't have too much words of wisdom for us, what would you recommend for people to do if they ever go to Greece?
Ooh, there are a lot of man, it's just a beautiful place. I mean, the people there are wonderful. They're very, very nice. And I mean, whether it's one of the islands you're going to, whether you're going to Athens and going to the Parthenon and just going up on the Acropolis, just taking the awesome culture, food, views there. I tried out a lot of their well-known dishes, the pasticcio, the moussaka, the what was the other one? Sutsu kakya, the baklava, all the sweet, savory things were enjoyable. The euros, all that, and yeah, I mean there's a lot to see. There's something for everybody. If you're more of the beach or the party vibe, maybe you go to Mykonos. If you love the picturesque views of the city and the sea there, you might want to go to Santorini. Or if you want ancient history and tours and all of that, the big city life too, maybe you go to Athens, which was an awesome place as well. So there's a lot to do there. It was a unique trip that we got to go on. So yeah, definitely enjoyable.
That's awesome. I can't wait. Hopefully I can go sometime soon, and I will have to hit you up for all of those plans and everything and make sure I know that. But that is it for tonight. We are going ahead and going to cash out. See you guys.